Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of my cotoneasters and one of my hawthorns. Enjoy. Starting off with the cotoneaster then. So this is one I bought from local garden, sent it to me. I think it was about £9 on the pot. And as you can see, last year when I bought it, I've already cut it back quite a bit. It was just basically a bush. Couple of berries on there. Nice to see. As you can see, it's just started to leaf out, so I'm going to come and do some pruning work here. So of course, moving any low branches, it was a multi-trunk to start with on the right side, and there's a big stub that I left last year just in case of dieback. So I removed that as well. Some of the lower branches, and now I've just got to do a bit of branch selection and kind of figure out how I want the tree to be. Now these two sides are connected, so it is kind of like a multi-trunk already. And with cotoneasters, I find they grow really quite quickly, so you can do some quite major cutbacks and fill them voids that you left within about a year if you keep on top of them and prune them back. So I've already got a bigger cotoneaster, which is coming up in a repotting video, I think soon. Well, that was an even bigger bush, and then I'll cut it down to what I think is a reasonable size and taper. So this one is actually more of a marmade project rather than a show hen. So this is going to be drastically cut back. It does also need a repot at some point soon, just so I can sort them roots out. So whilst I'm looking at this tree, I'm trying to think of styles, and you know, for the first cutback you can have a kind of an initial thought of where you want the tree to go. But then it's how it reacts, and obviously taper differences from there. So when I originally cut this back, I just cut off the really long bits and just made sure that it would stay inside the kind of sides of the pot, and that it wasn't going to affect other trees that I have laying around it in terms of getting light, and you know, you have to manage that as well when you've got a small space. Now this one I can be way more drastic, right? And as you can see here, that part was just way too long and no taper for me. There was no need for it, and I kind of like these branches that are coming out the front of this tree on the left. It gives it a nice bit of movement. And then obviously because of that, the one on the right then has to be shortened even further. So it's going to be like a mother-daughter kind of composition eventually. You know, the hardest part sometimes with buying nursery stock is figuring out where the roots are, because some people will buy a nursery stock tree and then they'll repot it first to figure out where the roots are and then style the tree from there, which I'm not going to say is a bad idea, it's probably the best idea. But I'm always really worried about killing off new trees that I buy, so I tend to leave them in their container for at least a year. It's also because usually when you buy a nursery stock tree, they've only just been dug out the ground and put into this pot to then sell. You know, these are usually grown in large fields, under plastic tents. Very rarely would you have someone selling 5 cotoneasters that have been in the greenhouse and kept in the same pot. So yeah, they tend to just dig them up out of the ground and then whack them into a pot and sell them on. So you've bought technically a freshly repotted tree, so I'm not going to repot it straight away again. So yeah, based on that, I kind of have to style the tree off of where I think the roots might be. You know, within time you can kind of gauge where you think the roots will be. Now, cotoneasters are actually pretty decent at sending out roots anyway, so usually an Nabarium is pretty good to start with. You know, they grow from cuttings. You can take cuttings as thick as your thumb and they'd still probably grow from that. If a branch of a cotoneaster touches the ground, you can ground layer it fairly easy. So it depends on the species, obviously. I find larch usually start off terribly with their root system, no matter what you get. You know, I've got some bare rooted ones which I put into a forest. Their roots are shocking. I even bought a Japanese larch as a bonsai tree and the roots were still shocking. So yeah, differences in species there. So all I'm doing here now is just trying to wire out these straightish kind of branches. I could just clip and grow this. I find you don't always get the best movement, and with a tree this small you need the drama of you need the drama in quite a small portion of tree. I usually find the bigger the tree, the more you can get away with swooping kind of movements. The smaller the tree, you have to do some real drastic bends just to get the age into the tree, really. And now just a final look at the tree. So this is where we are today. We'll see how it grows over this year and go from there. And next up is one of my hawthorns. So this is bought in a pot of 3 from B&Q. They're all very much more skinny than this when I first bought them. I think they're about 2 years old now with me. I'd imagine they're probably a year old in B&Q because, again, dug up from the ground and just shoved into a pot together. So one, I tried to root over rock, and if you know me, you know my root over rocks don't really work, so that one died off pretty quick. But it also had the worst inverse taper. You can even see on this one, hawthorns are quite good at rooting as well. The problem is when they pot them so deep to sell to places like B&Q, they then start growing high roots, and there was one high root on this which was feeding obviously the trunk, and it's thickened up from that point. But that wasn't where the root base was, so you know, I couldn't just cut off the whole root base and leave it with one root. So instead I ended up with this. I am now debating either ground layering it at that point or doing a risky air layer. And I say it's risky because obviously at that point, if it doesn't work, although it might bud from the bottom base again, I could essentially kill off the whole tree that I've already built here. And not that it's amazing, don't get me wrong, but I've spent a lot of time on this one, a lot of wire, a lot of patience. So in general, I just don't really like killing off trees. So yeah, I mean the style on this one is a bit more, how to put it? Is it literati? Oh, I don't know. Bungin? I don't know. Would you have a bungin hawthorn? I don't know. It's a bit of a crazy style, really. There's a lot of feminine movement on the trunk itself, so I wanted to keep it quite tall and slender. Obviously the branches thicken up very quickly near the top, so I'm having to really drastically cut this back to get that thinner kind of twigging. It's also only this second year now in bonsai soil, and it's actually in a Wagamama's pot that I put some holes in. This is a little while ago when I wanted to repot trees, but I didn't have any containers, so I just had Wagamama pots laying around. Anything that works, right? But yeah, so this is actually the second year. So the first year in this container, it kind of just blew out crazy, right? The growth was insane. It was like it was in a nursery container still, or maybe even the ground. But I think in the second year in that kind of soil, you know, the root base is now kind of dividing as well. I'll get a bit more thinner kind of growth instead of being so coarse. So yeah, this time I've had to cut back drastically. And I'm sure you can kind of see where I'm going with this tree. The apex is going to be built up at the top there. And a couple of low hanging branches. It'll probably look more like a really slender pine tree than a hawthorn. But I find the trunk line interesting. I like the shape. It's quite a natural shape to it, rather than your typical S shapes or really drastic bends. But yeah, quite a simple one on that one, just cutting back to the first bud or second bud that I can see. And my hawthorns are generally clip and grow, just because they grow so fast that the wire damage you can do to branches is just, you'll never get rid of. And then just one final look at this tree. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.